Day 2 agenda will be focused on activity in North Africa, and we'd like to give a special thank you to our North Africa host, Telecom Egypt. You can catch up with Telecom Egypt at their booth, and they will be giving a live presentation this afternoon. The first panel of today will be a high-level look at activity across the region, joined by our moderator, Phil Cooper, Director at the Digital Infrastructure Accelerator, Ali Abbasen, CTO at the EADN in Algeria, Rock Libnik, ICT, Data Center and Cloud Business Director, Ooredoo, Ben Roberts, Group CTO and Innovation Officer at Liquid Telecom, and Abderrahmane Mounir, Chief Commercial Enterprise with Batelco. I hand over to you, Phil.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for logging in and joining this session. As Nairi mentioned there, this morning's focus is on really the North African opportunity, and we've got a great panel with you today to talk about some of the opportunities and also some of the challenges facing digital infrastructure and data center operators and investors in this region going forward. Those of you who were involved in the session yesterday would have remembered that I was involved in moderating the first session, where we had some of the C-level executives from a number of the pan-African region. Today, obviously, we're narrowing in the focus to North Africa, and we've got an equally prestigious group of contributors, and we're going to follow roughly the same path there. That we're going to talk a little bit about the hyperscale market, and then drill down with co-location, talk about fiber and some of the other interesting opportunities. And as with yesterday, we'll ask everybody in their first round of answers to do a short introduction to who they are and the organizations they lead. So really, going to kick off and talk about the hyperscale opportunity and what we're seeing from the FANGs in this market, and what their impact we're seeing both currently and going forward on data center growth and activity in the region. And Ben, I don't know whether if we can start with you. Obviously, Liquid very active in this area. How do you see this panning out on the hyperscale end of the market?
Thanks, Phil. So I'll first introduce. So I'm Ben Roberts. I'm Head of Technology and Innovation at Liquid Telecom Group. I've been with the company since almost the beginning, and done a lot of work on the network and started our data center business as well. But now I'm really focused on kind of new things, innovation, and how we use technology in our networks. But to come back to the question, I mean, the way we see the activity of the hyperscalers in our territories is that they're looking for hubs where they can make those big data center investments. So they're looking for hubs where you've got the largest available domestic market, and also an existing hub of connectivity that is enabling them to expand into multiple countries. So Africa being such a big continent and such early investment in hyperscale data centers on the continent taking place, but they're looking for those locations. So that's why we've seen so far most of the data center investment from these guys being in Johannesburg and Cape Town. South Africa being a pretty big economy, but also being a really big hub of connectivity for the whole of Africa, and we're looking, they're looking towards a hub in East Africa, a hub in West Africa, and most likely Nairobi will be the hub in East Africa. They're looking towards maybe Lagos, Nigeria. So we think that the trend is going to be something the same, except that for North Africa, the existing connectivity hubs is probably going to be cities in Southern Europe like Marseille, Palermo, where you've got a lot of fiber optic cables landing and a lot of interconnection peering taking place there. So really the opportunity, I think, for North Africa region is going to be around creating hubs of connectivity, and also exploiting some of the fiber optic routes that are going to traverse the Sahara and connect up with other places in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think, probably the Middle East is more advanced, but I think, in terms of, there are some hyperscale deployments there. But I think North Africa is going to have that kind of trend where it's up to countries like Morocco and Egypt, probably being bigger markets and for data, and to establish interconnection points and to leverage their position to actually make interconnection to their neighbours to the south, the east, the west, and all over.
And Rock, is that really? I'd like to ask yourself and Abderrahmane, because obviously you're respectively Ooredoo and Batelco. I mean, is Ben's insight there something you're seeing from your perspective from some of the leading telcos in the region? Rock, if you want to go first.
Thanks, Phil. So let me first introduce myself. So my name is Rock. I'm heading the ICT business at Ooredoo. So I'm from the commercial part of the organization as part of B2B. And in ICT, we are covering the ICT services, obviously, security, collaboration, IoT, and of course, data center and cloud. So this is a very interesting question. And actually, in Qatar, we already experienced this arrival of hyperscalers. Probably you heard that Microsoft announced last year that they will establish a node in Qatar, which will go live later next year. And funny enough, also maybe a couple of months later, also Google announced the same. So we will soon have 2 hyperscalers in the country, which of course for all the providers of data center and cloud, as same for Ooredoo, will have quite a significant impact. So in Ooredoo Qatar, we are quite a long-lasting data center and cloud provider. For more than 15 years, we are already serving customers. And these hyperscalers will, of course, influence our business models. But even before their arrival, we were already developing capabilities to support some hybrid options, because the public cloud is there anyway. So we implemented Azure Stack, which then very easily supports customer on some hybrid options, having some critical workloads in our multi-tenancy platform in the data center, and then using more consumption-based services like machine learning, AI, big data from the private cloud. And besides those, we are also building public cloud services capabilities. So we are building a professional services arm inside the company. So we are investing a lot in bringing these capabilities up. And we also signed partnerships with some of the leading worldwide providers of professional services, which will then enable us to actually support customers on the entire journey of going to public cloud, from analysis of the existing environment, analysis of the application, mapping those applications which you can go to public cloud, where they can go, and if they need to be maybe changed, or some of them maybe even have to stay on-prem or be even discontinued. So in a nutshell, a very big shift in the next 2 years expected here. So I'm always joking that the cloud in Qatar is going on steroids now. So mainly will be driven by hyperscalers, and we will all have to adapt to that.
Thank you very much, Rock. Abderrahmane, from a Bahrainian perspective, is what Rock's saying there resonating with the experiences you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I think, let me do a quick introduction. So I look after the enterprise market here in Bahrain, and I do also look after the data center and co-location. So we've built some capacity recently, and we have some ongoing discussion with some of the hyperscaler. And prior to that, I used to work in North Africa, in Orange, Morocco. So I know pretty much the connectivity landscape over there, as I was in charge of the wholesale market in that country. So if I have to, speak about the opportunity in North Africa, I think there is a lesson learned from what's happening in this region, because a lot of hyperscalers, they've already made the move to the GCC, whether it's the Microsoft or the AWS. And as a matter of fact, you all know that Middle East region is in Bahrain. Actually, one of the data centers just in our backyard behind me. So in order to make that happen, of course, there has been an offer and demand. definitely the domestic markets here in the GCC, whether it's in any country, they are a big consumer of content from the public cloud provider and the CDNs. So obviously, all these players, they wanted to come very close to their clients in order to offer the best quality of service and latency and such. So they started looking for places to come and build capacity or either acquire capacity. And there is the play is at a different level. So first of all, they will only come to a country where or a geographical region where the telecom landscape is kind of a level playing field. So one of the biggest costs and OPEX for any hyperscaler is connectivity. So if they go and build a lot of capacity in a place where the rules are not clear, then they will probably regret that investment because it's going to be a big problem. So that's number one. That you have to any hyperscaler is looking for. So as an advice for North Africa, they really and being again working in Morocco because it's probably one of the countries where it's geographically nicely located. The connectivity, unfortunately, over there has a huge deficit. If I compare Morocco to, let's say, Oman, it's probably they are at the entrance of a big zone, but there are probably 20 cable systems in Oman, but there are very little in Morocco, and they're all privately owned by by operators, and they're not open. So that's something that North Africa, and I don't know the situation about the other countries, that they need to work out that issue first. Second is building capacity and the capability of building it fairly quickly. It's a big boys game. When you sit in front of a hyperscaler, they ask for tens of megawatts within 3 months. That's by itself, it's a huge challenge. And if you cannot commit to that, then they will not come. So that's also something that, it needs to be really worked out and thought of. So either you put a lot of CapEx, you build it, and you wait for them to come, but you need to find the right compromise to make them not run away, because again, time is at the essence. The third thing is more at the regulatory level. And what happened if a hyperscaler is coming for public cloud services, the last thing they want to hear about is the neighboring countries cannot use it because of data sovereignty issues. And that eliminates them from big markets from neighboring countries. So again, whatever country jurisdiction is being put in place, they need to work out the regulatory, to give any customer outside of any jurisdiction, the right level of comfort when it comes to data sovereignty. So these are the three things that are really important in my eyes that actually we've been through here in the GCC that I think North Africa could probably leverage on and use them as a lesson learned so they can hit the road pretty fast.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting insight. And really just coming over to you, Ali, you're based in Algeria, and somebody just put up on the chat group that outside of some of the Gulf states, if you're able to deliver data localization in these markets, it's a huge opportunity for local telcos. And obviously, Algeria it potentially plays for that. How does some of the comments that the rest of the panel have said about the opportunities in North Africa resonate with what you're seeing on the ground in Algeria?
Of course, thank you, Phil, for this great opportunity, and thanks for everybody. First of all, I will introduce briefly my company and myself. So EADN, which roughly translates into a company for the support of digital development in Algeria, was founded in early 2018 as publicly owned digital services company. We are working mainly with governmental and public entities in Algeria, also with operators on different fields, ranging from information system design, IT implementation and design, also organizational optimization, digital transformation, master plans on IT and IS side, private cloud design, etc. So for myself, I am currently the CTO of EADN, managing the software engineering, information system, IT and cloud engineering, and also data center facility department. I am also working as an international expert in ITU for ICT and telecom standardization. I've worked on study group 13, that is the lead study group for network and cloud computing. And I'm actually participating to study group 20, which is the lead study group on IoT and smart cities and communities. For the region, I'm working also as a vice chair of the ITUT study group 20, the African and the Arab regional groups, and also working with the study group 13 as a liaison rapporteur for the EMT, which is the 5G name for 5G in ITU, and also participating in standardization work in the Arab standardization team. Formerly, I was a researcher, director of Telecom Research Division, a research team lead as well, and research center for the development of advanced technology. So I have also research and academic background. So, as colleagues said, actually, for now, we are observing hyperscalers. We are not observing, let's say, intention from hyperscalers, GAFAM, FANGs, or public cloud, big public cloud service providers does not seem to have the intention to invest in North African market. In my mind, this is perhaps due to the proximity of Southern Europe and maybe also due to past or ongoing investments of these actors in the near region. Obviously, Southern Europe, GCC, as it was mentioned earlier, or other parts of the African continent, like Southern Africa also. In the other hand, we have also, it could be due to the development of some newly rising European public cloud players that are very popular. We have, for example, the OVH Cloud, for example, which is very popular in French-speaking part of North Africa, but does not seem also to be aiming to invest in these markets. So they are delivering services from Europe. This is also an important factor regarding the willingness of the public authorities of North Africa. Generally speaking, North African countries adopt a strategy of sovereign cloud, such the one that we have actually in Algeria. We are developing a governmental data center and sovereign cloud to have a collocation for the public market, which could obviously be based also on public cloud technologies. We have been speaking of Azure Cloud, Azure Stack as a possibility to have a public cloud-like services on-premise, which is used. Azure Stack is used actually in Tunisia to host their ECM, BPM governmental services, but on-premise actually. We have also some big cloud providers that are also there is the constraint of the regulatory constraint in the region, especially with regard to governmental and personal data, medical data, and finance and insurance data. We have a tendency to follow GDPR-like regulations, but adding to that, that the data does not have to leave the country, has to live inside the data centers on the country. So this is maybe an opportunity for some of cloud providers to have their investment in the region. Just to recall the last decision of the French government to use Microsoft Azure to deploy their national e-health data hub. We have also the investment in the region could be mitigated. This fear of investment in the region, in my understanding, could be mitigated by the ongoing development of some large-scale projects that could, for collocation wholesale, that could be of interest for the hyperscalers. To name it, we have the Datacloud data center in Tunisia, which is a somehow large-scale data center that could be used to deploy hyperscaler services in there. We have also investments in Morocco coming from the OCP, which is the Sharifian Office of Phosphate. They have a joint venture with IBM. and maybe they will be developing certain cloud services also. So I think that majorly I join colleagues in let's say the regulation barrier, the regulation that is actually not attracting hyperscalers and other investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. Just summing up on some of the points from that first round of questions, it's clear from pretty much what everybody has said that data sovereignty is a really important issue. The broader regulatory environment's an important issue, and the availability of fibre. And Ben, just kind of recapping on that with yourself, how much of a challenge do you think it is to address those issues in the region? I think, Ben, we've lost the sound.
Sorry, I was
on
muted.
mute or something. Yeah,
I was muted. Yeah, so the data sovereignty is well, look, it's about having a competitive. I think what Mounir saying about the competitive environment of regulation. So if you have data sovereignty laws that say you must keep all your data in this country, that is going to deter investment. So the type of approach that Ali is talking about, of having more GDPR-like rules, is the way forward. And so we see, we're also working with Azure Stack in other countries where the hyperscalers are not. Africa being really big, even without data protection laws, there's still a need for local storage of large data. Once you get into the sensitive types of data, we were talking about medical records and personal data, patient, government databases of identity. You definitely want to keep these, in your own sovereign grounds. So that hybrid cloud approach for us is really, really good. And we're seeing a lot of enterprise customers being really interested in this. They want to use the hybrid cloud either on their own premises sometimes, but in a co-location data center, and then have the option of being able to use the hyperscalers. But from the fiber infrastructure point of view, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure that's already there, and we did a project, and it was a flagship project we did a couple of years ago, connecting from Cape Town to Cairo. But we really used fiber that already existed crossing the Sahara, leveraging off the networks of Ethiopia Telecom, Sudatel, and Telecom Egypt. And I think the sort of two viable terrestrial routes that crossing the Sahara is the one from Algiers to Abuja, as well as that one from that's coming from Cairo down towards into Kenya through Ethiopia. So those fiber routes can be leveraged, but people have got to actually. It's not just about having infrastructure; you've actually got to use it for interconnection and peering. So if you have closed environments that say we can't peer, we can't interconnect on this border, we have to do this and that, and maybe we've had too much restriction in some countries, that is going to stop it. But if you the opening up and allowing cross-border peering and interconnection is really what has made emerging large backbone networks in sub-Saharan Africa. So North Africa probably has to do the same. You've got to come together a bit and use the infrastructures that are there, and kind of build regional networks.
Ben, thank you very much. That's a really interesting point. And Rock, just to kind of elaborate on that, what we've seen in other regions is groups of countries coming together to address some of these issues. Do you see the opportunity to do that across North Africa and the Middle East? Yeah, definitely. See, those hyperscalers not just coming to serve local markets, right? So it's, of course, they're having multiple probably criteria based on which they select the location where they will put a data center. However, for sure, it's not just for the local markets, right? And even GCC being quite close to Africa, Northern Africa, I think it's also a good opportunity for them to start addressing those markets and not having an issue on the latency, which it's usually you are having very demanding applications like transactional applications can be an issue if you're going to Europe, even if you're using express route. So yeah, I do believe that this is the opportunity there. And in the Northern Africa, I don't know the markets well there, but still, for sure there is a opportunity for
to host some of those big hyperscalers. I think Microsoft even announced something to be built in Northern Africa. I think it's in Israel. So for sure, this will be coming there as well.
Thank you very much. And really just really want to now move a little bit away from the sort of hyperscale market, but I think some of the same trends will apply, and really focus in on the sort of enterprise market. Some people have already mentioned earlier in our conversation, public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. So really looking at some of the large domestic markets in the North Africa region, there's some very seriously large, concentrations of people and businesses. How do we see the enterprise market evolving across the region? And I guess, just drawing on some of the points about regulation, about fiber, but also about the proximity to Southern Europe, because obviously at the moment people have talked about, interconnections with Palermo, Marseille. Is there the opportunity, and this is, from a European perspective, is there opportunity to reverse that flow and have Southern Europe, drawing upon, connectivity resource in North Africa, where, it may be more efficient and cheaper to provide? And I guess just start really with you, Abderrahmane, and then go to Ali. First on this, how do you see that end of the market playing out across the region?
So Phil, if I'm getting your question, you want to speak more about the enterprise?
Absolutely, yeah.
Domestic, market and the attractiveness to go to the cloud. Again, it starts at a different. There are different components again for any market to mature, any domestic market to mature and start adopting, cloud and moving to the cloud, whether it's a public cloud or any provider of a local sovereign cloud. If I refer back again to Bahrain, to the country that I know pretty well, it's kind of abnormal, but the government here is leader in the cloud migration. So first of all, from an organizational standpoint, and again, I've worked in a different market, in the government of Bahrain, there is an entity which is the CIO of the entire government. So you have a leadership, minister level decision maker when it comes to digital transformation. So that makes it also very simple, when a decision is made and then the execution, rather than, I've seen in the different countries where, like a Ministry of Finance is extremely strong and another ministry is very strong and they want to drive their own IT agenda. So here it's there. And then from there has been a cloud first policy document that has been written where you have to go cloud to the extent where budgets for hardware have been cut off from all the budgets for all the governments. So you really have to go and justify why you're not going to the cloud. So that's what, again, pushed the market to really mature. And then, again, a lot of people were afraid, a lot of decision makers, but then, the consumption of cloud in the government behind is at a very decent level. So that's one thing. So again, we are expecting the same thing to happen probably also from the central bank, because again, one of the biggest clients is the finance sector. That could, a big client, but again, the regulation is extremely strict, and they need some flexibility from the regulator. So here again, they are playing a big role where banks were allowed to move to the public cloud. So we see some movements now where some of the banks are moving some of the workloads, to the cloud, because the CBB, the Central Bank of Bahrain, have authorized these movements. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And then the last one is the co-location market. Everybody, again, needs to have a disaster recovery. And with the amount of, I would say, the dependency on IT to drive digital transformation agenda, now none of the enterprises can afford having any downtime or any issues. So they are really moving from server rooms to a professional, data centers, and they are outsourcing. Cybersecurity is becoming an issue. So it's a big burden now on any enterprise, to basically do everything themselves, from a cybersecurity team, from an outsourcing team, from a server room, etc. So we see also the appetite into moving to the cloud or to some co-location players. So that's a big movement that's happening. Sometimes it's driven by a government agenda, taking the lead, but it has to be driven by a sector and also by a policymaker or a regulator.
And thank you very much for that. Ali, building on Abderrahmane's point there about how they're approaching this in Bahrain, how do you see in Algeria and in the broader North African market, the co-location market playing out? Does it need, a government drive behind it? Are we seeing, sector, banking, finance, energy leading the way? How are you seeing it among your customer base?
Thank you, Phil. Actually, I'm joining perfectly the point of view of Rock, Ben, and Abderrahmane. Indeed, for North Africa, we have also another parameter, which is the proximity of Europe, of Southern Europe, that tends to attract co-location customers from North African markets. So, especially with the scale factor that is not the same for the domestic market in the region. So, there is also another obstacle for co-location market in some countries of the region, where public players are showing a willingness to invest for their own on-premises data center facilities. This is a big, let's say, a big common factor for North African countries that are tending to invest in on-premise facilities. Nevertheless, actual drop in investment budget that are not maybe cut in budget, but drop in investment budget for the public sector in certain countries of the region, that could be caused by the drop of oil and gas prices, mining product prices also. These could be also positive for the development or consuming of OPEX versus CAPEX investments. And also another factor is the obsolescence of certain on-premise facilities that were developed in the past. So we are seeing in the banking sector many facilities are obsolescent. We have also the obsolescence that touches the IT investment rather than the facility in itself, combined also with the difficulty of maintaining highly qualified resources in public and government entities, especially when we are not having such a CIO of the government. We are tending to have great, let's say, expenses in the services that are coming from foreign countries. That could be also, let's say, another factor that could lead to the transformation of the transition from the CAPEX spending into the OPEX spending. This could be very attractive and may push public CIOs to consume the co-location services and then go to develop their cloud migration or go to cloud projects to have cloud native services. Especially if public cloud offer developed in the region are, let's say, compatible with the technologies that they are using from day to day. We have offers coming from VMware, which is very popular in the region, that we could also find in public cloud offers. So this will give a better guarantee to the CIOs to have a mirror infrastructure in the public cloud that could be easily managed by their teams. The IT investment obsolescence, I think that this could be the major factor of acceleration for the go-to-cloud projects in the region, offering more opportunity for public cloud service providers. I hope that public cloud service providers, at least coming from local operators and then from hyperscalers or big public cloud service providers, will have some investment in the region to take this opportunity.
So thank you, Ali. And Rock, really just following on from some of Ali's comments there, I mean, there seems to be a journey taking place that's the classic, I guess, digital infrastructure and why we're all here and doing what we do, that, you know, that conversion from a CapEx intensive investment to having services at an OPEX level is something we've seen in lots of other regions, and it seems that journey and that trend is something that we're seeing across North Africa. From an Ooredoo point of view, is that something that you've seen in the markets in North Africa you're working in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are quite a big, like I said, quite a big data center provider for more than 15 years. We have also quite a large, let's say, footprint of physical buildings of data centers. We have 5 data centers within Qatar. So co-location is absolutely a very, very important service which we have historically. But now with all the changes which are happening, and even before that, for the last 4 years, we are in transition to start offering customers a little bit more advanced services than just the co-location services. So we are going up on the stack of providing cloud like IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. And currently we are working with a lot of customers who are co-locating with us to support them on that journey towards the cloud, which will then, of course, offload them with this headache of managing the entire stack of the cloud themselves. They can leave this to us and really focus on the business, right? And as I said, 2 hyperscalers will be here in the next 2 years. So this will definitely be quite a big shift, and more customers are now talking about cloud. We are also hearing about cloud first initiatives being somehow, let's say, suggested also from the government. And so it's really going now. Cloud is coming with a full speed, and this will be definitely a trend going forward. However, having said this, doesn't mean that co-location will just die, right? And I still think that co-location will stay. Of course, there will be some transition of customers from co-location to cloud. However, there will be for sure also some customers who will want to have a little bit more control over their infrastructure, and they will still prefer to use co-location with maybe some additional managed services like monitoring, or even offering DR, which was mentioned even earlier. We are currently offering DR inside Qatar and also outside of Qatar. So co-location will not die. I think it will become more for really advanced customers that are having very strong IT departments, and they want to have a full control, whereas the others, I believe, will slowly start moving towards cloud. Be it then of course, on the private cloud within our data center, be it public cloud, or even having hosting on our shared IaaS platforms.
And I guess you're seeing there sort of almost like a mix between customers having private, public, and hybrid.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So historically in Qatar, we were seeing a lot of capex investments. Like if I go 5 years and beyond back. So a lot of customers were investing in their infrastructure. However, now I think more and more are realizing that it's better to offload this to service provider, because especially we are offering business models which are maybe a little bit more attractive from the cash flow perspective for the customer, changing capex investment to opex investment. And all these scenarios, we are seeing that some customers are still having a data center on-prem and then using, for example, our data center for a DR, or they move both locations to us, or even one location outside of Qatar. So all the scenarios are currently being offered, and we are already having customers on those scenarios.
Thank you. That's some really good comments there. I think what I'd like to do is almost peel the onion a little bit more. We talked about the hyperscale, then we talked about co-location, but coming into sort of the last third of our time together, when I look at some of the projects I've been involved in North Africa and in the Middle East, one theme that seems to jump out at me is around edge and IoT. Obviously there's been a lot of focus in Saudi around the smart city initiative and NEOM. There's a lot of cities of the future in Egypt, and that to me always leads me to think about edge computing, about IoT, and just sort of more general urban connectivity issue. And obviously fiber plays into that in a big way as well. And Ben, how do you see, edge compute and then I guess IoT off the back of that, not just the over-the-top guys, but providing sensors and monitoring materials across large urban districts. How do you see that playing out in the region, both North Africa and I guess the Middle East as well?
So, I mean, first of all, it starts with connectivity and devices, and cloud is there as well. But we've invested in some countries in a countrywide IoT network. We've partnered with Sigfox to provide countrywide IoT connectivity for devices. But in a country like Kenya, for instance, which is pretty well technologically advanced, IoT is still very early, and we think about 1 million IoT devices in the country, and a large part of that is, locally innovated solutions for microfinancing. Solar panels is the biggest application. But, that's 1 million devices in a country with 45 million people. Globally, we're seeing around 3 devices per population in the world, maybe 20 billion connected devices. So we're 1 to 45 instead of 3 to 1 in Kenya. So it's really, really early. And from a perspective of IoT applications, you're just going straight to cloud. There are many other use cases and innovation use cases which also are going straight to cloud, and startups being born in the cloud. Where we see a great opportunity for edge is in video stuff and video processing, CCTV. A lot of people are having CCTV in their premises and just having an NVR in their premises. Somebody spills the coffee cup on it and it doesn't work for a while. Having video analytics really can increase the level of security, and some of these industries are ready to be digitally transformed in a big way, and that will have impact as well, perhaps on the numbers of guards that we employ and things. So, but there are applications that are going to need edge compute, but they're even earlier than the IoT applications. So it's quite a long way to go, but I think the focus for us is on locally innovative solutions for local problems when it comes to IoT, and that's kind of where we're working with that sector of the startup community.
And Abderrahmane, in your markets in Bahrain, I mean, is that a similar experience around edge?
Yeah, I would say I would concur with what Ben just said. The edge computing will really pick up the moment you're going to have to process either some data that requires ultra high latency. So here we're talking about Industry 4.0, and you need maybe some automation in a plant or in a refinery. So that's probably a small amount of data, but it needs a quick decision. And it needs to be very close to where things are happening, or like what Ben said, if you're processing the video feeds, with a huge amount of data that needs also to be done. So as long as these two things did not pick up properly, then the edge computing, I think, will still have ways to go. And in terms of what's going to drive this are two things. So of course the promises of 5G. On the massive IoT, which is not there yet. So in Bahrain, we've deployed quite a lot of the 5G, but today it's a pure fiber replacement. The standards are not delivering yet the ultra high latency that we're looking for, and the massive IoT, and the ecosystem is not even there. But yes, we will get to the point where edge computing will definitely be a main driver for IoT, and as Ben said, all the IoT kind of platforms today are born in the cloud, because everything is experiment. You need the time fast to market. You need to innovate. So nobody is investing, into something, some dedicated vertical hardware. The name of the game is definitely going cloud. And as the amount of data will be much bigger and bigger, then things will probably move to the edge.
Thank you. And Ali, from your perspective in Algeria, how are you seeing edge and IoT play out with you?
Thank you, Phil. First of all, I think that I have spotted a tendency in North African market to prefer 5G as the network technology for IoT. We are not seeing large-scale deployment of technologies like Sigfox or LoRa or something like that in North African countries, at least in majority of them. So in IoT application domains also for North African market, maybe we could observe diversity of needs and requirements compared to sub-Saharan Africa. So in North Africa, we have some large cities with dense population in the northern part, and more industrial infrastructures than other parts of the same region. And maybe also we have this influence coming from certain European cities that have adopted their models of smart city. This will certainly, we will see the development of IoT infrastructures on urban spaces, especially for smart city applications. And maybe also, as Abderrahmane said, on some industrial installations for the deployment of Industry 4.0 applications. For the edge data center part and the edge cloud infrastructures, those could be deployed, let's say, on top of 5G based applications in the field of urban and industrial infrastructure monitoring. The monitoring is one of the applications that could be one of the first ones that could benefit from edge and 5G infrastructures. In fact, we have actually certain projects in grid, the energy grid monitoring and smart metering also that are ongoing in the region. So we have this this part or this dimension, which is urban and industrial infrastructure monitoring, that could be day one scenarios for IoT and edge computing and edge cloud applications. After that, we will have maybe general public applications for everything related to entertainment services, like personalized and localized multimedia, over-the-top services also that could be also accelerated or optimized by using edge cloud technologies or other applications such as telepresence applications that we are willing also to use in this type of pandemic that is actually ongoing. Also, we have the possibility to use this kind of technologies to implement telemedicine application. In fact, we have large countries and we have large disparities between big cities and other parts of the country, Saharan parts of the country, that could be also benefiting from this kind of services. So the disparity in public service offering will lead to applications like telemedicine, decentralized and localized control and monitoring services. Will certainly find their customers in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. That's really interesting. And Rock, and just following on from that, what we seem to be hearing is that there is a lot of potential use cases. IoT is going to go straight to the cloud, and so there's a kind of edge cloud opportunity there, and OTT as well, and some industrial use cases around specific industries. Is that something that resonates with you in Qatar from an Ooredoo perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in Qatar, we are not talking about smart cities. We are actually talking about a smart nation. So as Ooredoo, we were awarded last year quite a big project called TASMU, which goal is to deliver a central IoT platform, which will then serve the entire nation with all the several IoT use cases, which will be then delivered, of course, by multiple parties like service providers, ISVs, startups, and other entities. And we already mentioned everything is now in the cloud. So even this platform will sit on Azure cloud when it comes to the country. So and all this is part of the Qatar Vision 2030, where digitization is one of the main pillars on the nationwide, right? And already mentioned, I think we always a little bit forget about the enabler for IoT, which is of course the connectivity and network, right? So as you know, Ooredoo, we already have a very robust network already now, and but already quite a big footprint already on 5G, which will then even accelerate the use cases which will come to this platform. But nevertheless, we are already offering some of the classical IoT services for years already, like fleet management, condition monitoring, also some industry-specific solutions. You know that oil and gas sector here is very strong, and we will continue to do so. However, having the platform on the nationwide, I think it's a quite interesting setup, which then actually drives the entire digital economy. When it comes to edge, see, for Qatar is a very small country, right? We have 150 kilometers across, so latency is not a big issue with the network we have. However, I fully agree with Abderrahmane when he said that there will be for sure use cases which will require edge computing, either because a lot of data will have to be processed closer to the source, or we will really need almost a zero millisecond latency, right? So this is, will be the, let's say, a view of Qatari market on IoT.
Thank you. Very interesting. I noticed, just looking at the clock, we're coming into the last 9 minutes of the session. It seems to have flown by, and I hope that's the same for everybody. Really like to finish off really where some of the points that you guys have all made around connectivity, and really talking about fiber in the region, and also the subsea cable market seems pretty interesting area of focus at the moment, and just really talk about and again I'll start with you, Ben, if I may. How do you see the fiber market play in North Africa in terms of who's going to own that over time? We talked a little bit about that as an enabler to new data center operations coming online, both from hyperscale and cloud and co-location. Having that availability and control of fiber. How do you see the market more broadly, and bringing, I guess, subsea into that as well?
Yeah. So what we see now in the subsea world is, the investment in subsea, particularly in Africa, especially right now, is really being dominated by the hyperscalers, the drive for investment. And you see that the two massive fiber projects that are there and coming in with huge capacities that are way more than the previous round of subsea cables that have been funded and built by telcos normally. But however, those are what we, the usage for these subseas are really what we call trunk routes. The prime use is going to be data center to data center trunk routes for those hyperscalers, and we see that the global market for subsea is being taken up by these guys. So the original cables that telcos have built, the terrestrial fiber, even some of the smaller regional subsea fibers are going to change their purpose and become into access cables. When we look at the data that's actually flowing through the cables, particularly within Africa, within the African context, we look at the data from telegeography, we see that the countries where the data is flowing between is countries that are doing that have got traditional infrastructure routes and are doing a lot of trade with each other. So it's movement of people, movement of goods that become trade. So we see a lot of data flowing from South Africa to Zimbabwe to Zambia to DRC. You've got copper moving up and down these paths. Same path in East Africa from Mombasa all the way into through Rwanda, Uganda into DRC. We see these trade corridors as being where the data is really moving within the continent. And I think that's as we look at the Africa Free Trade Agreement, and North Africa is part of that, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. When it comes to trade in digital assets and digital services, that can move faster than maybe we won't be moving cement across the Sahara, but we might be moving digital assets across the Sahara, taking advantage of these lower latencies. And even with the Middle East, I mean, from Kenya where I am, we've got a subsea cable which stretches to the Middle East, and it's the only one. It was originally purposed and Kenya wanted to connect to the internet in the fastest possible way. But right now we're seeing it being more useful for getting traffic from these big data centers that you are having in Qatar and Bahrain. And for instance, one of the biggest, I won't mention who it is, but one of the biggest global video games that is one of the most popular video games for the last 5 years, online multiplayer game. The closest service to Africa are hosted in Bahrain. So we're seeing the traffic from from this, the video gamers are very latency sensitive, so they're using this subsea cable we have to Middle East to get their online games on. So the digital marketplace, really there's a chance that Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa will all be in it together, right? So it's about taking advantage of the infrastructure that we've all built together collectively as telcos.
Abderrahmane, you got a name check there for Bahrain, and I think we can all guess which video game it is. It's only going to be one of the two or three. Looking at it from a Bahrainian perspective, those fibre routes that Ben's articulated seem to be becoming more and more key, especially as digital traffic increases. Does that resonate with you?
As I mentioned in the when you started the first question, is the connectivity and the availability of diverse routes, dry route, wet route for the hyperscaler is really important. But I will take it to another level. It's not only about availability of the capacity. Somebody has to step in any country and create, first of all, an IX. If you don't have an internet exchange, a proper one, established, then your submarine cable, I don't know what I say, they'll probably be useless. So first of all, a hyperscaler always looks for a connection to a few IXs, because that's where should be all the domestic players are in. So in Bahrain, one of the things we launched last year is we launched a local IX that's really picking up fairly quick, and the amount of traffic in it right now is just abnormal. And the information is available on the public website. You can look at Manama IX and how's the uptake of the traffic. So that's one thing. But again, a proper IX will only exist if you have a proper colocation facilities. So if you are investing in your colocation facilities, then you have to create some kind of a concept of a global zone, or we call it a free zone, where the big players need to come with extremely aggressive rates, to come and establish whether it's a CDN, whether it's a gaming player. And then the moment you start attracting these players to your, data center colocation, and you establish a proper IX, and of course, as a telco, it's always hard to make these places really carrier neutral. Then you will see that everybody, it's a win-win situation for the country, where it's much easier for the hyperscaler to come. So to really make your cable extremely attractive and people wanted to come, there is a need for this roundabout where everybody should meet, and that's how we exchange traffic among the different players.
Ben, I see you're dying to jump in there.
It's a really important point. I'm a big fan of IXs, and we've seen in Africa some of the bigger IXs becoming regional IXs. I'm on the management committee of the internet exchanges in South Africa, which are community run. And we've started to, the bigger IXs in Africa, in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Nairobi, Durban, they've started to become multi-site internet exchanges. So they're no longer just carrier neutral, they're data center neutral as well. So this is really the progression. And this is then what creates these hubs of connectivity. And, we do peer in Middle East. We peer it in a place, in a landing station in UAE. I would hardly call that the most carrier neutral facility in the world. We do have some peering there. You know who I'm talking about. But we really would like to we'd love to have a great place to peer in Middle East as an African provider that would have really open access to all the operators. So we can't access, in the one we're in the Middle East, we can't access all of the Middle Eastern operators.
Ben, thank you very much for that. And just finishing off with Ali and then Rock, the availability and ubiquity of internet exchanges, are really key to this. I mean, how do you see that in the North African region from your perspective, Ali?
Thank you, Phil. Actually, we have the mutualization of subsea optical cable infrastructures between the countries of the region, at least those that are on the Mediterranean going to Europe, or on the Atlantic going to the US, for example, need to be also coupled with peering infrastructure, as mentioned by Abderrahmane and Ben. In fact, we do not have many GIGs or IXP or IX facilities in Northern Africa. Rather than this also extends to do not having those kind of peering infrastructures with the Middle East, having in mind that North Africa is mainly or totally Arab-speaking region. So this could be also interesting to have some sort of hub going across the region, North Africa and GCC. So those services could help us to improve quality of service, resilience of internet, also infrastructure. We have been suffering a shortage internet caused by a cut in the subsea cable in the region. Also, regarding the other parts of the region connecting North Africa to sub-Saharan region, we have the trans-Saharan cables that are going, for example, the last having in my mind is Algiers, Jinder, Abuja fiber optic cable. That could be also interesting to develop services toward this sub-Saharan region. So I think that the IX business have to be developed in the region.
Thank you very much, Ali. And Rob, the final word to you on IXs.
Actually, not much to add to what colleagues said. So even, same in Qatar, we also established last year IX here, and also Ooredoo is having one node in our data centers. And of course, this trend of bringing hyperscalers to the country will only increase the demand of the international capacity, especially those hyperscalers which are bringing, let's say, more multimedia services, which are then a little bit more bandwidth consumption. And what is also we are seeing is if all these hyperscalers are also having a huge demand. Also, Abderrahmane alluded a little bit on this before. Even in the connectivity, they're expecting really stable and very low latency connectivity.
Well, thank you, guys. I think we've hit the wall in terms of time. It's now 2 minutes past the hour. So I think really what I'd like to do is thank you all for a really interesting session. I think you've really highlighted some of the opportunities and some of the challenges in North Africa and the Middle East, and I think it's been a really useful session for everybody involved. And I'd just like to thank each and every one of you, our participants, for really interesting contributions and really thoughtful discussion. And I guess, Nairi, there will be the opportunity to for everybody participating and watching from their computer screens to contribute via the chat. We've had a few chat comments made, and Ali, I noticed you've responded to one of them. So, and Abderrahmane is still doing there. And please, we haven't had as much time as we'd obviously like. And the whole talent issue seems to be one that we have missed. So maybe for next time we'll prioritise that as a question. But it remains to say thank you all very much for your time and thank you.
Thank you all guys. Ciao. Salam.
Bye.